and welcome to the Art of Aging podcast of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire all to age with abundance. Our guest today is Michael Roediger. Michael is the director and CEO of the Dayton Art Institute in Dayton, Ohio, and a champion of Dayton and the arts. He's held his positions for the past 12 years, and in this time has led strategic efforts to position the museum for growth and to spread its influence in the larger community. He is committed to an inclusive experience for all museum visitors, as well as enriching the Dayton community with meaningful experience. We are so pleased to have you on the show today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are not many folks who have risen to the position of CEO, let alone in the museum space. So what drives your passion for museums in your position at this point in time?
So I was fortunate to get this position 12 years ago and to move into it. It wasn't a life goal. I wanted to work in the arts and certainly in leadership, but I've found that museums create a language. When you go to a museum, if you can't read the panel, you can understand the art. The art really goes back to the earliest ages of humans communicating. And so we find ourselves in museum. The passion is telling our histories through beautiful art and how people experience it and how they engage with it. And so the passion drives that, is that how do we keep getting that message out? It's a place for safe dialogue. It's a place to talk about difficult conversations. And we can do that in a place where people can come in and know that it's okay to think differently. But to do it in a very civil and kind way. That's what I think of the art. Art is almost for some people a respite. So I think I love that part of it, is that we're creating a place where you can find wholeness or solace or just to think. And sometimes people, come in groups and have fun, and some people need to come alone. We need to be that place in our community. And I think museums around the country and the world serve that same purpose.
I am a huge fan of art museums. My children will tell you that I drug them to art museums in a variety of places. And I know that visual arts are one of the things that help to cultivate the experience and the emotions of awe. And that's just really important for the way our brains work, for sparking creativity. I was really interested to hear specifically about the history of the Dayton Art Institute. And could you just tell us briefly, because that helps to bring you to where you are today, and how is that history continuing to change as you see that going forward?
So the Dayton Art Institute started as a school in downtown Dayton in 1919. It was a group of people that came together wanting to learn the arts and crafts movement. And they started teaching each other, and a school was born. So then they started doing projects and creating art and having shows, and then they bring in some art. And it really just evolved. And it was the brainchild of a woman named Julia Shaw Patterson Carnell. She's our matriarch, and who we look to even today for guidance. What would Julia do? And she helped to build this beautiful museum that looks over the city of Dayton, and really grew from when they moved into the building in 1930. It had 200 objects to now over 28,000 objects. And we're considered a mid-level museum. We're always very transparent about our museums, and most fine art museums were started by the white wealthy elite for the white wealthy elite. And I would like to think if Julia lived today, she would see that we're a different world and a different community. And we're really working hard to make sure everyone feels like this is their museum. We're thankful that they set the groundwork, but we just, museums, like everything, should evolve with time. So, we have a very strong European collection and a very strong Asian and American collection. But we don't have a large African-American collection. We have a beautiful African collection, but not African-American contemporary artists. And so we're working really hard because our community is about 30% African American, to show that there's representation there. But it just doesn't stop there. Our vision is that you'll walk in if you are Black or white or gay or straight or Hispanic or Asian, and you see yourself on the wall, or a sculpture that you find meaning in. We just reinstalled, we have a beautiful collection of Middle Eastern work. That's, there's been some conflict in the Middle East for quite a long time, but that doesn't mean they don't have beautiful art. And we have started to see people come in to look at their history that wasn't reflective on our walls or in our galleries. And so that's our big goal, is to create this Italian Renaissance, looks like a palace that's almost intimidating to some people, and say it's okay to come in the doors. You don't have to be an art scholar. You'll be able to find yourself here and relate to your history.
So you've talked a little bit about the changes in the community that are helping for you to define the changes in the museum going forward. What other sort of changes, and how do you actually go about discerning what those are and designing the museum to meet those changing needs? We're talking about age, use of technology, learning. How do you use those pieces of information?
So, we talk to a lot of people. We ask our members and guests what they're interested in. We just completed a new strategic plan called Intentional Momentum, and it's going to people where they are. It's connecting with our audiences. And right now we're starting within a 3-mile radius. We know we have people in different parts of the town that we've traditionally always had in Dayton. But who are the people that live right around us? And one of those is, an area agency on aging. And we want to partner with them to talk about what are the needs of people that are aging in our community and how are they living today compared to how our grandparents lived. And how do they come in and have an inclusive and welcoming experience? We've also been working with Goodwill Easter Seals and United Rehabilitative Services to talk about how do we provide programming and access to people with different abilities. I'm really proud that we're in the process of installing a universal changing table. I never thought about that. I mean, that there are adults that need that assistance, and if you don't have it, they can't come. And so, and it's going to become a law in Ohio in 2025 that you have to have those. So we're working to get ahead of that, trying to create access for how people can get around. We're a 104-year-old institution. The building will be 100 in a few years. And, there's a lot of stairs in here, but how do we create access? The other thing when you talk about learning is how do we go to people where they are? How do we go to a senior living community, or how do we go to a community center that serves the underserved or people that are in financial need so that we can provide access to them? We started a program a few years back when Dayton Metro Libraries redid and rebuilt most of their libraries. Beautiful. And we said, we want to be a part of that excitement. We partnered on an art program with them, but what we also did is provided library cards that could be, or membership cards that could be checked out of the library so that folks could try it, so that they can come for free. If someone is on SNAP or food assistance, we also we provide a family membership up to 6 people for $10 for the year, because we want people to be able to come. Anybody, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic level, should be able to have access to a beautiful art museum. That's what it's for, the community. So if you create barriers, they can't get there. And so we've been really working to say, how do we break down the barriers? And a lot of that, you have to go to people with education programs. We are in the process of interviewing, as part of a program in Dayton, an organization called Learn to Earn in Preschool Promise, to hire a gentleman, a man, it's very specific, a Black male artist to go in the community to preschoolers and teach art. And it's called Black Boy Brilliance. And we want to be a part of that because those are future artists. Those are future people that are going to want to see the museum, but they may not have access at this point in their life. So it's really thinking outside the box. I like to listen to a lot of voices because I don't have all the answers. But I'm excited about where we're going.
Oh, that's fantastic, Michael. I love the library card idea that you can check out the museum membership card to go for free for a day. Um,
A week. You can keep it out for a week.
oh, true. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. It occurs to me, this has been one of my issues I've been trying to raise. We live in a very age segregated society. And I, it strikes me as you're talking that museums are one of the places where generations can come together and have an experience together, experience the same materials together, and it might be different ways, and having to adjust for you know learning abilities and styles. But how do you see the intergenerational connections that happen within in your museum space?
It is really beautiful to see because we have an aging audience of traditional museum goers, and then looking at new ways to attract people to museums because they're so integrated in technology. And so we're looking at how we bring those two together. I will say it's a beautiful moment when my 21-year-old son is here with my 90-year-old father, and they're looking at art and they have different perspectives and they're having dialogue and talking about it, or my dad's telling him something about his life that relates to it. So we see a lot of grandparents buy a family membership and bring their grandkids, their younger grandkids, and introduce them to art, especially if it's a two working family and the grandparents are helping out, so that it starts at a young age. We really feel like we're at a tipping point of creating and engaging an aging population for the style of learning and engagement they want, while introducing new types of learning. Then the two can come together. One of my favorite stories that happened last year is that we do signature events. We have a big Oktoberfest, we have an art gala called Art Ball, and then we have a fun event coming up called Bourbon and Bubbles. And we assume that's a younger audience. But a friend of mine who is 90 something said, well, I want to come to that. And I was, were we thinking that older people wouldn't want to come? She had a blast. She was the life of the party because everybody loved that, this woman who was 90 something was there and enjoying the bourbon and talking to the younger people. So it was an exciting moment. It's kind of that aha moment of don't say this event is for these people and this one's for this people. You got to think broadly, and how do we bring people together? One of the exciting things that will be coming up in the next year is we just are introducing an app. We're part of the Bloomberg project that helps build apps at museums, and it creates access for a lot of different people. Some people say, well, my grandmother's not going to use the app. Well, she can check out an iPad and make the labels larger. A lot of times we see people that get too close to the art because even though we've got them at big print, they still can't read them. So they can put it up. Or if, they somehow have a little bit of vision, they can also listen to the labels. So they'll be read. They can be done in 30 different languages. But then there's stuff for younger people to do that's more active with the technology. So when we talk about this app, we talk about from, cradle to retirement, who is going to be using it. And I think that's how we have to think. We're all aging, and we don't want to be left out of the wonderful things that a museum and the world has to offer.
Absolutely. Are those all a part of what you're calling the idea?
Yeah, we're very integrated in everything that we do with our idea: inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And we also use the E as empathy. And then we'll often say idea B and throw belonging on the end. So everything that we do, we ask that question now. And it can mean a lot of different things. It can mean race, it can mean age, it can mean socioeconomic, it can mean someone who served in the military and where are they now? I mean, we do a veterans program for veterans that are blind, and we have them come in and they make art and they get to feel things and they're talked through the experience, because we don't want to leave them out because they're blind. And people think, well, if you're blind, you don't want to go to an art museum. It's not true. There can be beautiful moments. We don't want all the blind people coming in and touching the art, but we can create moments where they can touch things and feel textures and talk about a work that creates a vision for them. And then they get to feel it. So they're having sensory experiences, and then they get to make something. So it's all part of our idea work. We do our idea work with how we're trying to get members and how we do our events and even how we market now. You know, we'll look through things and we'll say, no, this doesn't represent who we are. Take better pictures. And we worked on that for a year. We're like, we want better pictures that represent our audience. And I think that's, you know, that intentional. We're intentional about what we're doing. We can't expect people to say, well, we've changed, so come. We have to prove it to people.
Yeah.
We have to build trust. You know, and that doesn't come. I often say it doesn't come overnight, because I can't unwind 100 years of just being a white institution. But you have to start someplace. So much to the fact that even we've committed, when we have funds that are used to purchase art, that 75% of them, if it's unrestricted, goes to buying art that represents marginalized communities. So art by or showing African Americans and Hispanics and LGBT or people with different abilities, whether the artist or the subject. And that has proven to be really meaningful in our community. I mean, I love to walk around the galleries and see someone all of a sudden have this moment of, they look like me. Or I had that experience. My family did that on Sundays, or whatever that is. You can see the connection and people light up, especially children. And I mean, but also when you see an older person who hadn't seen themselves and they see someone who looks older in a painting. You know, we often think of people being, when you do a portrait painting, in their prime. Well, who's to say an older person isn't in their prime? It's a different prime.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Norway this summer, and there is a large city park, and it has the most sculptures from one artist. And I should have looked this up. I forget his name, but the thing that struck me is all of the sculptures, and it's stone, bronze, a variety of different medium. None of them have clothes on, and they depict people across the life course. It is just the most amazing, beautiful thing. The other thing that I always like to use when I'm talking to folks is sharing the stories behind the artists. So yeah, I'm one of those people who reads those pieces of information that the museums have up there. But you know, everyone knows the pictures of the water lilies from Monet. He didn't start painting those until he was 59,
Right.
and there were like 250 in that series, and the last one was painted, I think, right up to the end of his life, like at 84. And to be inspired by folks who later in life, yeah, he had been working on his craft and his artwork his entire life, but he is known for the work that came later in life. And
That's interesting you mentioned that. Just yesterday, I presented on a film about Monet here in town, and we saw a lot of that work and talked about how his work, when he started painting that, how he was mastering the look of that. But then he started, and thinking, you know, back in that time, there wasn't a lot they could do about cataracts, and his vision changed and the art changed. And that didn't mean he was more of, you know, the traditional impressionism, which still at that point hadn't fully been accepted.
Right.
But then when you look at later in life, it almost looks like he was ahead of abstract expressionism. And because his eyes had changed, it was still beautiful work, but it was how he was seeing the world now. It is fascinating. It really tells a story of an artist. And you're right. Think of Grandma Moses.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
wasn't in her prime until she was in her 70s,
Yeah.
and became known around the world while she was living. I mean, she was on the cover of Time and meeting presidents. So life can take you in many different directions.
And how artists go beyond the changes in their physical abilities, um, and they find new ways to express, like Monet. Another piece that I love about Monet is the first couple of years that he went to Gavern. He was just there for a short period of time, and then eventually he owned it. So not only was he painting those paintings, but he was working with the gardeners to plan what plants to plant where,
Right.
so that next year, in his mind, he was envisioning next year, these are the colors that are going to be here and here. And so he was working on the palette and the subject matter seasons ahead of time.
Right.
And again, and particularly for older adults, we don't often think about them planning for the future. And yeah, so those are,
Oh no,
don't
he wanted to continue painting for sure, and
yeah.
that discussed this. The film is called I, Claude Monet, and it discusses how he was doing that and how they needed to protect it for this season. And
Yep, yep, yeah.
and I think of like Matisse, even when he became bedridden, painted from his bed with a large stick. He didn't want to give up, and he was fighting for his art.
Well, and that's also when he started doing the paper cuts.
Right.
And for some people, he's more famous for the paper cutting than he was for the artist, but he didn't start doing the paper cutting until, I think he had strokes or something.
Yes. But
And
he
so,
kept saying, I'm going to create, I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah,
contribute.
yeah,
And that's, again, I think that's the beauty of art. I mean, that you can express yourself no matter. I mean, think of when parents put paint with a baby and just let them smear, they're expressing themselves, whether they realize it at that point or not. And that continues throughout life. There are different levels of art, but anybody can have that feeling of expression throughout their life.
yeah, yeah. I could go down this road a lot longer, but I want to come back to the Dayton community and the way that I have come to meet you, and I know that you're working with others at United Church Homes, is through a project that's happening in the Art Museum's neighborhood. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and why you and the museum is really interested in this project?
Yeah, so Longfellow School is historic in our community. It's on the National Historic Register, and it sits right on a street parallel to where the museum sits, called Salem Avenue. It sat vacant for a while, and it was interesting to walk into it because it was like time had stopped. Just one day they said, we're not teaching school here anymore, and everybody left, and there were still books and things on the chalkboard, and they were done. And so I have a friend, Tim Forbes, who had been a pastor and a fundraiser, and he had retired from both of those and started really looking at how do we develop in marginalized communities to help create really a growth and rebuilding or a renaissance of a community. And so he was looking at creating a senior community focused in the LGBTQ plus community and allies. And he approached me and said, hey, we're in your neighborhood and I'm part of the LGBT community. And we'd like you to help us with this project. And I thought, well, how do I do that when I'm working on, building up the museum? And he said, but that's what you've done is you've kind of turned the museum around and we're right in your neighborhood. I serve on a lot of boards, but I traditionally don't serve in a role where there could be fundraise because I need to raise funds for the museum. So we changed the title that I'm the community advisor. And I went to my board and I explained, this is good for the DAI. this investment in our neighborhood is good for the DAI. And, we've started to see other projects that are starting. And I think it really is because of Longfellow, someone saying, we're going to invest here. And other folks now, you go down Salem Avenue and they're starting to invest. So it's working. And to us, that was vital because it's helping to bring audience to us, and we can go to that audience at Longfellow. We're excited about the partnerships that there can be created there. And it's important to me as someone in the community that as I age, if I decide to live there, which I talk about that with my partner a lot, we're not quite there yet, in our mid-50s, even though I could, I'm eligible, that we want a place that will be safe, that we know that the people that come in and provide care understand our community and respectful of who we are. We also want to be able to live in a community where there are people that are part of our community and that we can celebrate together, but also allies. I mean, most of my friends are not from the LGBTQ community. I have a lot of them that are, but we just want what everybody else wants, to have a safe place to age, but not like our grandparents did. We want to have programming and things that we have access to easily, like the art museum. Literally, if people are mobile, which at Longfellow, most of them will be mobile, you can walk to the art museum. And so that was that tie of, we want to help build and lift up our community. And an investment like this, I mean, there's no question it's going to bring people to the museum and allow us to serve folks in the senior community with programming, and helping to spread the message of how art can help you age abundantly. And so we're very excited about the project. I was a little nervous going to my board because I've never asked for anything like that, but my board chair was all in and said, this is the right thing to do. It will be good for our entire community, but it'll be good for the DAI as well.
Those who know me, and I've said this many times before, that when it gets to the point that I and my spouse may be moving into a community, besides it being open and that all can live there in safety, another feature that's going to be really important to me is I want to know what kind of space is available in the community for creativity and artwork. I have a sewing studio. That's not going to be available in an apartment, but what would be available in a larger complex. It had never occurred to me what is the proximity of that community to other spaces where I can be creative. When I was there recently, I in my mind, I just hadn't put the Longfellow as close to the Dayton Art Institute as it is. And bells were going off in my head. Oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great to be near an art museum? I would volunteer at the art museum as well as participate in other programs that might.
We have classrooms and art educators, where we can program things together. There's going to be a creative center in Longfellow for creative making of all different types. Yeah. And I think those things are important. Creativity doesn't end at any point in our lives. Like I said before, people are creative up till the day they pass.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you, Michael, for this time. And as I said, I look forward to many more conversations with you in the future. We just won't record all of them. And I do need to get over to the Dayton Art Museum, Art Institute. I haven't been there in many years. So as we come to the end of our podcast, though, there are 3 questions that we ask folks. So are you ready for the questions?
I'm ready.
Okay. When you think about how you have aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
I think one of the biggest things is that I feel like I'm my true self now. For many years, I lived as someone that I wasn't because that's what society told me I had to be. But I also was afraid of acceptance from my family and I came out late. and identify as bisexual. And so what would that mean to my spouse and all those things, and my son, and would, my son be embarrassed of me? Would my board, not want me to be the leader anymore? And what I found as I got older was that everybody loved me for being me. And I wish I'd have done it all younger. I wish I would have allowed myself to be who I am. But I think as I matured and accomplished things in my career, and I felt like I can be who I am. And so I think with aging, I have come to a realization that I'm going to be who I am. And this sounds maybe a little harsh. And if people don't like it, I don't care. I mean, I think that's it. I've come to is that I love who I am. And if people want to love me, that's great. And if they don't like who I am, then I don't make room for them in my life. And I hope that as most people age, they come to this realization of who they are, and that we all bring some light to the world, whether it's creativity or leadership or love. I really think, and I try to do this here at the Dayton Art Institute, I try and live by a servant leader style, and I try to lead with love. I love the people that I work with, and that, that I want to surround myself with people that want to live in the light of love.
Fantastic. Thanks. Okay, question number 2. What has surprised you most as you have aged?
I think what surprised me most is that my mind and my energy feels young, but sometimes my body doesn't. And so I'm working to try and say, I'm not going to let my body age the way it thinks it should. So whether that means physical therapy or keep walking, or, trying a different type of gym or something, I've said to my younger colleagues, keep moving and moisturize. Those are my big advice. Use a good skin treatment and keep moving. And, I suffer from fibromyalgia, but I'm not going to let it not let me do the things I wanted to. It was just in the last 2 years, I'd never kayaked. I kayaked twice in the ocean. I didn't think I would be able to do that in my mid 50s. Or I hiked, 6 miles down into the Grand Canyon when I was 53. I'm not giving up on what my body is telling me sometimes. The aches and pains are worth it to have the life experiences so that my brain thinks. My 90-year-old father always says, I look in the mirror and I think, I feel like I'm 30. But I'm 90. And so I think if you feel like that, why don't we keep trying to do the things that we want to do, that we said, boy, I wish I'd have made time for that. So travel and activities, I'm not letting my body tell me that I can't.
Fantastic. Thanks. And here's the last question, and you may have already given us a hint to this one, but is there someone that you've met or who has been in your life who has set a good example for you about aging, someone that inspires you to age abundantly?
There's 2, if that's okay. And one is who I mentioned, my 90-year-old father. He didn't retire until he was 83. And God love him, that was to care for my mother, who was passing, or I don't think he would have retired. And he's still sharp. He's an architect here in town. And in fact, we were talking the other day, and I said to him, in probably about 10 to 12 years, I'll retire. And he said, we don't retire. We don't retire. And so even in that he is officially retired, he's joined clubs, and he's in a reading group, and he's driving downtown. I mean, he's living an active life. And a meaningful life. And so I think, that's been a great example. Then I have a friend that's in her mid 80s. And when her husband passed several years ago, she sat down with me and she said, I have the friends we had together that are all our same age, but that's not my only friend group I want to have. And so a lot of her friends now are in their 30s and 40s and 50s, because she wants to be surrounded with different energy and different people, and learn what younger people are thinking. She's quite the community activist. And she's really shown me that, again, you can do anything at any age. And she serves on boards, and she's going on trips too. And, she's done those line things that you slide, I forget what those are called, but you ride on the line.
Line?
Yeah.
Zip line.
She
Yeah.
did it at like 78. And I was like, wow. And she said, again, I'm going to do it. I'm going to live my life to the fullest. And I think I said to her once, I hope when I grow up, I hope I'm like you.
Yep. Yep. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for sharing about your Abundant Aging heroes. And thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of the Abundant Aging podcast, a part of the series from United Church Homes. We want to hear from you. What's changed about you as you've aged that you love? What has surprised you most? And how do you define abundant aging, and who is your abundant aging hero or influencer? You can visit us at www.abundantagingpodcast.com to share your ideas. You can also give us feedback when you visit the Ruth Frost Parker Center website at www.unitedchurchhomes.org/parker-center/back hash. And Michael, tell us again, where can people find you and information about the Dayton Art Institute?
Well, at our website at DaytonArtInstitute.org. Very easy to find. Just type in Dayton Art Institute and we'll pop up, and my email's on there if anybody ever wants to reach out to me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for all the work that you are helping to shepherd the Dayton Art Institute, and the many ways through your idea and Idea B and your connections throughout the community. And I look forward to more connections in the future.
Thank you, Beth.
Blessings to you all.